being data driven gets a good rap and a bad rap. I think at the end of the day, to me, it's about understanding fundamentally how the data works at your business. When you understand how everything works, you can be like, hey, this number is down. Did this pipeline break? Did this workflow do this? Is this shifted? And if you don't have that context, it's harder to have conversations across the org and it's harder to know what's happening.
Hey there, welcome to ClearVoice Mike, Marketers in Conversation. I'm Joanna Bowser, the Director of Marketing here at ClearVoice, and today I'm welcoming Meg Gowell, the Director of Growth Marketing at one of my favorite companies, Typeform, to the podcast. Welcome, Meg. Let's dive in.
Hey, Joanna, so excited to be here and excited to kind of hear what you guys are up to and share some things on what I'm up to too.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask a big question first, and you can answer however you want. But tell me what Director of Growth Marketing means at Typeform, because it can mean different things at different companies. So what do you cover? Like, what are your practice areas? What's your charter?
Yeah, I feel like everybody says that their function is the most misunderstood. And I feel like if you're in growth marketing, it also is the most misunderstood. Is it growth marketing? Is it growth? No one ever knows. It's been a lot of different things in my career. Here at Typeform specifically, I'm responsible for a few different teams. So one is the paid media team that manages our full paid budget, which is a big part of Typeform's overall go-to-market strategy. I also manage the web team, the lifecycle team, partner marketing, and then we have like a special programs coordinator as well who does things like our localization project that we're working on right now.
Okay, so a few things.
Just a couple, yeah.
That's a few things. And I'm curious because that's a lot, right? That's a lot for a director level. So I want to start maybe kind of my first question is around sort of your personal approach to leading different types of teams, because they're all different kind of charters. I know they have metrics and KPIs, but how do you approach that as a director or a VP in your space?
Yeah, I think it's really been a learning experience for me, quite honestly. My last role at AppQs, I was really in more of an IC role. I managed BDR for a little bit, but it was much more me, hands on keyboard, being the one doing the work. And transitioning to Typeform, it's been a big jump. Like now I have a team of like 9 to 10 under me. We have some open roles too. It's a big jump from that like much more hands-on part to much more of the managerial side. And I think it's been something that I'm still working on and honing and trying to get better at. Definitely a lot of context switching. I think the thing that helps with my team is overall, we all really care about the numbers. And at the end of the day, my focus coming into the team has been, we're all responsible for the numbers as a whole. I don't care like everybody should have individual KPIs, but I would rather focus on the number as a whole. And if the number as a whole isn't hitting, like none of us are doing well, it was something that they'd fall into in the past a little bit of like everybody's lines were green, except the overall one was red. And that's when you have a huge problem.
Right.
So a lot of our focus has been, okay, what does the overall number look like? And as a result, how can we like work together to get there? So there's been a little bit of like breaking down silos, trying to find places where people can work together. I think that's helped me kind of connect the dots between it and have it seem a little bit less going from one to the other. That said, I do think there are definitely times where it's like, I'm thinking about a problem that's happening on one side. And so as a result, it's harder for me to switch gears and start thinking about like an email campaign, or maybe we're having this bidding issue on the paid side. So some of that I think can be really challenging. But I also think that I really lucked out and I have an awesome team who are all really, really solid operators and know what they're doing. And a lot of them are even more experienced in some of these areas than I am. So a lot of what I'm doing really is helping them talk through their problems and figuring out what I can do to make things easier for them. I'm not necessarily like telling them this is what you have to do. I'm more saying, okay, how can I help you get there? What can I break through on my side to make it possible?
Yeah, I love that you just said that, because that's something that I've realized stepping into a director role too, is that yes, I have subject matter expertise in certain areas of marketing. Where I don't, I bring in the SMEs, right? But I'm like, my job is to like block and tackle for the running back, who's the expert, right? Is like, what do you need? Do you need budget? Do you need people? Like, let's go, because that's where I can really make a difference. But you're the expert in paid, right? Like that's one of my like areas where I'm a little weaker. Content's like my like real muscle. And so I'm like, what do you need? Like, I can do that. I can do the bulldozer if you need, right? So that's really cool. Now, where did you come up through? Like, what was the areas that you came up through?
Yeah, so I started my career in like really small performance marketing agencies. So paid is truly like my bread and butter, especially paid social is really where I have a lot of depth and strength. I also did a lot of like, when you work in a small digital agency, you do a little bit of everything. So like I would build the website and WordPress and like I would do all of the things. So I have like a little bit of experience in everything and very much that kind of like, T-shaped, full stack, whatever you want to call it, marketer. I think there's a new name for it
Every
every
month
other
there's
day.
one. Yeah.
Um, but over time, like partner marketing is something that I really don't have as much experience in. But I have someone on my team who's an expert, and I will always tell her, "You're the expert, not me. Let me just ask a couple questions to maybe poke a couple holes, and you tell me why I'm wrong. Like, let's just do that more than anything else." So I think it kind of varies function by function how much I'm like giving advice and how much I'm just trying to help them talk through it. But I've been trying to move more to the like talk through it. Tell me who I need to yell at. That's what I always say. Do I need to go yell at somebody?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, and I think engenders a lot of trust between sort of team and leader, if you will,
Mhm.
that you've got their back, just like they've got yours, right?
Yeah.
And I was really interested in what you said about breaking down the silos and really looking at, the world in which everybody's green on their KPIs, but you're still red as a team, and really what that can look like. Because we at ClearVoice we remade a couple of years ago. We were like no longer marketing and sales, we're revenue. Like it's
Oh,
just one
nice.
revenue motion, right? Some months we're great at that, some months we're not great at that, but like that's the like ethos, right? And so I'm curious how that, one, how your team, how you broke those silos down and brought the team together, but two, also how you work with sales, because I know there's a big enterprise sales component to Typeform as well, and what that looks like.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting. We have a lot of Typeforms, like the majority of Typeforms business is self-serve, but our sales-led side is growing quite a lot. And so there's this kind of mix of continuing to fuel the self-serve side, which really marketing is largely responsible for on the acquisition side. Obviously, product is who we have to work with closely on that. But at the end of the day, like if the number's not hitting, we're gonna get the flag for it. Um, and then on the sales side, it's really figuring out that sales motion. Like it's a newer motion for Typeform. A lot of it is much more inbound related, right? Of like a current customer is raising their hand because they've hit a certain limit in their plan. And so there's a little bit of like, okay, we know we have this like natural trickle. How do we grow it more? And that's a slightly different thing than we've done either on the sales side or the marketing side. So it's working really closely together. I would say specifically on the sales side, what I have found in my past, because I've worked for more sales led companies in the past, is
Sure.
that you really can't have this like MQL target and then sales is responsible for the rest. It doesn't work. Like if those people have different numbers, because what counts as an MQL is not the same as revenue in hand, right? As we all know.
Yeah,
I've always been most successful when I'm responsible for something slightly further down the funnel, when we're all
sure.
responsible for an actual revenue number. Pipeline is generally what I like to look at. And then on the self-serve side, it's really us working closely with product. The product team owns, that first onboarding experience, but lifecycle is also part of onboarding. So there's a ton of overlaps there between what my team is doing and what product's doing. And I think we're getting better at it. It's one of those where, as you said, some days you're crushing it, and some days you definitely have some places to work on. But we've spent a lot of time trying to create the right touch points for people
Sure.
and trying to create the right moments where we can share roadmaps. So go to market and product have been both sharing roadmaps more than we were before. That's like at a really macro level. At more of the individual team level, there's certain one-on-ones by teams that work really closely, right? So like lifecycle and onboarding PM need to talk a lot. So they need to like align together more. And I've found that it's both the touch points and then also having like individual big projects to kind of get the relationships started.
Oh
So
yeah, cool.
yeah, so one example was like, life cycle and onboarding have worked a lot on this new churn initiative we have, which is really specific to the first 30 days. And so they've been talking together a lot about, ooh, how can we fix this specific problem? And I think when it gets that specific, it's easier to start working together and see where the overlap is. And then that kind of helps you see where more
Sure.
overlaps are in the future. Paid
Yes.
has been doing something similar with creative. In the past, it was very much like paid would say, I need an ad for this. Creative would make it. There wasn't that collaboration. And
Right.
now it's much more like, hey, here's my organic social strategy. Here's my paid social strategy. Here are these new awareness thought leader ads we want to run. Let's talk about it and work together on it. So having those like a small project to kind of kick off the relationship, I think helps and then can snowball into something that's a little bit more like ongoing.
Sure, that's a really cool strategy to like build collaboration between teams that aren't like that should collaborate but don't maybe
Yeah.
think they naturally should or naturally think they should. So I love that where it's like we're going to solve this one problem. And then it's like, oh right, I do like my counterpart on this team actually is really helpful.
Yeah.
Like keep talking.
It's just making them realize sometimes if right
Yeah,
like you're in your lane, right? And especially in remote work, we're fully remote. I think everybody gets in, they try to do their job and like get out. Like I think everybody works really hard, but because you're in your own lane, you're in your own meeting, sometimes it's hard to be like, oh, this person's doing this and hey, that could really help me.
Right.
So we're getting there. I don't think we're perfect, but we're working on it.
I think part of the battle there is just recognizing that that's a cultural way of acting and operating, and I think that's like half the battle, like
Yeah, yeah,
truly,
yeah, totally.
because it's siloism. Once you see it, then it becomes not very easy to break down, but like there's more steps around it. So I
Yeah.
totally get that. Yeah. Now you brought up something that I wanted to ask you about was the thought leadership ads. So I'm curious because you mentioned those when we were talking, beforehand. I'm curious, what have you been doing with that? Because it's kind of a dark. Like, first of all, LinkedIn is like everyone's like some people like crush it on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
We have not been those people. We've tried multiple things. We're like, I can't keep spending money there. So I'm curious how the thought leadership plays are working for you on LinkedIn, because I think a lot of B2B brands and B2C brands, because that's really kind of, I mean, you're B2C and your
For
acquisition
all the things.
motion,
Yeah.
but yeah. But I'm curious, like how that's landed and what's working, what's not working, like any sort of tidbits you can give to anybody listening to.
Yeah. So I think I probably was one of the first adopters of them actually when I was at AppQs. Super interesting ad format. I feel like a lot of what folks see on LinkedIn is just, hey, this is the best thing since sliced bread, do it. But I
Sure.
don't think it's that helpful because then people try to do it and they're like, well, why isn't it just like working for me? um, and I think the hardest thing with LinkedIn at the end of the day is that it is more expensive. And so sometimes when you look at it against other channels, you're like, I don't love it. Also, as a platform, they're working on getting more sophisticated. But if you compare it to Google or Meta, like the ad platform itself is just nowhere near
Sure.
as advanced in terms of like the controls, the things you can do, even the date pickers for me are like how I tell how advanced somebody is. Like, how good is your date picker is like the number one.
Yeah, no, LinkedIn's was terrible for even just like the organic stuff. I'm like, can I have not just the last 30 days or
No,
last
it's
20
impossible.
days or whatever?
Yeah,
Can
yeah,
I
yeah.
please just like look at a month? And finally that showed up. And I was like,
Date pickers. I'm telling you, this is how you tell how good a product is it's date picker. But yeah, so at Typeform, I kind of started doing it basically speaking in different voices of people at our company and writing content for them. So I would be like, hey, I want to tell this story to our audience. I'll write the post for you. Will you post it? And then I would boost it. And so I think having that experience of writing has been really helpful to me.
sure.
Coming into Typeform, they really hadn't done a ton on LinkedIn, which makes sense because there's a ton of self-serve in the business. It's much more of like, I honestly see it in the self-serve side, it almost looks more like an e-commerce structure of like, it's
Yeah,
very transactional, it's very fast. So like Meta and Google work amazing for us. Even TikTok works really well for us. But
right.
LinkedIn never really made sense because it wasn't that like long tail buyer cycle or anything like that. But we also had a situation where because it was so transactional, overall our paid media spend was very heavy on demand capture. So much everything we were doing was like in the moment, this person's searching for it, let's grab them, which makes sense, but in the long run it was kind of stifling our growth and it was a little bit of diminishing returns with the challenges you're seeing on search right now and all of that kind of thing. So when I came in, I was like, we really need to invest some in an awareness layer to kind of get people talking about us more again and to kind of
Sure.
get our name out of the market. More thought leadership on like how one should use forms, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so as a result, this was one of our big like breakdown silos moments, started working together with the paid team and the creative to be like, let's run some awareness based ads on LinkedIn where you can get, much lower costs per click, cost per impression if it's awareness focused versus conversion. And we know because it's paid social, like people are less likely on LinkedIn to click and immediately convert so you can see it in a perfect little attribution line, right?
Yeah.
It's more likely they see it over time. It kind of like helps them. So we worked with the creative team to create a few thought leadership ads. I write my own posts. So I kind of like helped being like, this is how you need to structure it. And I think there was that level of folks internally just hadn't done it before. And if you haven't done it before, you haven't written a post that like is clickable, gets people to kind of stop the scroll, you're not as used to it. So a lot of our shift has been kind of just changing how our ads are to go from what I would call like a traditional ad is very much like, it's a billboard. It's something you want people to, I guess a billboard you wouldn't click, but it's something you want people to click, right? The
I get
whole
what
goal is like
you Yeah.
click and move on. It's not absorb this information on platform.
Right.
So
Right.
our shift was into like what I would call like zero click paid social. So it's like, how can I create paid social content that the goal isn't to get you to click. The goal is to get you to completely like absorb it and to consume
Right.
the content on platform. So that shift was just really different than anything they'd done
Sure.
before. And we've kind of had a lot of fun with it. We've used it now for both just like general awareness for marketers who are our kind of core ICP initially. And then also as we've layered on our new talent plan focused on like HR and recruiting, it was a really great opportunity for us at a very low cost to kind of promote the product launch while also starting to get awareness out to this core audience that we haven't really talked to in the past. Yeah. And at this point, we can even generate like new business, paid accounts from these ads and tie it back to LinkedIn. So, and I know in LinkedIn, like whatever I see is probably, maybe half of what we're actually getting. So
Yeah,
even
for
if
sure.
the math even works in platform, it's even better than you thought.
Right. Exactly, exactly. That's super helpful and really interesting, and I think really feeds into the value that LinkedIn can provide just generally in the space as far as providing knowledge. I mean, as long as people aren't just like busting out just AI, blah blah thought leader posts like very thin,
Supercharged. Yeah.
but are really doing like really great, really great work, which I'm
Yeah.
sure everybody listening to this podcast is. I'm sure you guys are all doing great work. But if you're just using AI, you should probably rethink that. And I'm a big fan of AI.
Yeah.
So I wanted to. You kind of touched on something inside of this as like thinking about how to use forms, and I wanted to. This is like not a product plug for anybody listening, but I do want to ask you directly, like, what are the top X ways you can use Typeforms to like grow your leads or your business? Like,
Yeah.
platform's yours. So
No, I think the cool thing and also the tough thing from a go-to-market perspective about Typeform is that it is super horizontal. There are so many uses. Like we have folks, doing their fantasy football leagues via Typeform. And then we also have people doing like, employee onboarding and amazing lead generation forms and stuff. So where we see folks have a lot of success is kind of in three main areas right now. So one is very much on the lead gen side, both B2C and B2B. So B2C, you see a lot of, product recommendation quizzes are a really big opportunity. It's a really good way to kind of like help people figure out what product is right for them. And it's a super easy platform to build something like that without getting your whole engineering team involved or creating a really complex web experience. Like you could do it all on a form and like I could do it in 5 minutes,
right.
You could probably do it in 5 minutes. Anybody could do it in 5 minutes. That's a statement. And then on the B2B side, we see it a lot for sales forms, qualifying leads. We do in our growth plans have like lead enrichment. So you can kind of like enrich the leads, qualify them, route them like all in the moment, basically. You could take them on different paths based on like what enrichment, characteristics you're finding. And then with video in the forms too, it kind of adds that personal touch that makes it easier to connect with folks. So we see a lot of those kind of two big use cases of like getting people excited about products, pushing them in the right direction. And then on the lead gen side, qualifying and also engaging a prospect. We all know if you've been on the sales led side, like you kind of have to keep people like engaged and excited the entire time.
Yeah.
Otherwise you can lose them at any moment. So those are two big opportunities there. As I said, we recently launched our talent plans. So folks are using it to kind of like recruit new folks to their team. So you can use it to like acquire job candidates. It's an interesting way to like fill out an application. And you can use video too. So you can have like kind of like a mini interview as part of your application or something like that. That's really interesting. And then on the research side, we see a lot of people use it for like customer insights. So running surveys to figure out what are my customers saying? What are they interested in? What do they like? There's a lot of great opportunities there, or like, generating customer stories or something like that. So it kind of like runs the gamut of what you can do. I think at the end of the day, what helped me the most joining it, because when I was outside of Typeform, I'd used it before, but I hadn't even thought about all the things you could do with it.
Right.
When I first joined in onboarding, they were like, okay, introduce yourself with a form. And I was like what? And then you start to realize that there's so much you can do in a form system. It's basically, an async way to have like a conversation with somebody. And there's so much you can do when you think about it that way. So yeah, I've seen a ton of really cool uses of it,
That's
honestly.
very cool. Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I'm a big fan of Typeform is because we are users here, and I've used it on other things, and we're actually working on building a lead qualification system because in B2B marketing, what is it? Only 3% of your buyers are actually like ready to buy, right?
Yeah,
So there's a bunch of people that don't want to necessarily get on with an account executive immediately, but they still need information. But we need details from them to be able to give them the right information because we have a lot of bespoke solutions.
yeah.
So building out in Typeform the sort of logic of all that
Cool.
in a scoring system so that we know, okay, that when they hit Jake, one of our account executives, like inbox, he's got all the information he has, that he can send them some really great information. maybe send them a personalized email that will entice them to get on the phone. But he's already got a lot of the data that he needs to be able to provide support,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like provide pricing and potentially get a sale without having to go through the whole like rigmarole of multiple sales calls and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think it can be a
I don't
great
want to talk to
opportunity.
people anymore. It's very
Yeah,
funny.
I know. Let's just talk. As somebody who hates being on the phone, I totally get it.
I actually like I early in my career I was a BDR, so I was on the phone a lot, did a lot of
Bless
deals.
you.
So for me, I'm like, hey, what's going on? They're like, whoa. Like somebody called me. I'm like, yeah, it's just faster sometimes. But I get it. But there are a lot of people that maybe they're just gathering information for the bigger team. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why they may not want to hop on with sales immediately. But that's one of our like up and coming use cases. So I really like that you mentioned the sort of qualification piece and the branching, because that to me is like where it's really interesting. And then obviously the acquisition, it was an acquisition of Video Ask, right? And now you're
Yeah.
integrating it.
It was
Yeah.
so it was kind of like a separate product line almost first. It kind of operated as its own business, but it originally
Okay.
was part of Typeform.
Oh, yes.
And
Okay.
then they
So
realized that, at the end of the day, the Video Ask customers were asking for the same stuff that our Typeform customers had. And that was the moment where we were like, yeah, it helped that business grow really quickly, which I think was
sure.
huge to prove it
Yeah.
out because you didn't have all the red tape of a bigger company. But then they got to the point where they're like, really, they want the same platform that Typeform's on. And we think that there's a much better solution bringing video into the product and kind of having it as this one-stop
Yeah.
shop for everything. So.
Absolutely. And for those of you that don't know, Video Ask is a platform where you ask questions via video as opposed to, or you can do either one, right? Written or video. And we use that a lot for testimonials. So
Oh,
that's,
nice.
yeah. So we'll
Great.
say,
Yeah.
hey,
Great for that kind of use
because
case.
it's like you're talking to somebody, somebody's asking you the question versus just like, meh, like you're reading it. So yeah, that's a big one for us. So awesome. So I want to go just kind of talk to you a little bit about like you're a marketer, but I know that I happen to know you're also a mom.
Yeah.
Of you have 2 kids and 2 dogs, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Kid mom and dog mom.
So how are your kids and like where are they at in their growth journey?
Yeah. So I
At home, I think. Just
say
to
that
be
again.
you're a director of growth at home as well, it sounds
Yes,
like.
I am. There's growth all around me. So yeah, my oldest is 6 and my youngest is 3.5. My oldest started first grade yesterday and my youngest started preschool today. So earlier today I was a little bit sad. It was just one of those moments, where you're like, they seem like they're growing up so fast and
Yeah.
a lot of changes right now, but they both crushed it. They're both like doing the best at school. They love it and are having a lot of fun. So it's exciting to see them like kind of grow up and get older and start doing all that stuff, even though it's hard to like push them out to do it
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah. What else, like what other types of things do you do outside of work just to kind of keep yourself, growing engaged or, anything with the family or anything like that?
Yeah. So my husband makes fun of me because I have no hobbies. He's one of those like perpetual hobby people. He has like a gajillion hobbies, and I'm like, dude, I have a career and I have 2 kids. Those are my hobbies.
Sure.
But yeah, I like working out, so I'll like go for a run, go for a walk. Honestly, I feel like I come up with my best LinkedIn posts and my best marketing ideas when I'm like walking or doing something
Yeah.
like that. We like to be outside a lot, so like as a family, we're pretty outdoorsy. We live in Rhode Island, so we're lucky that the beach is right here. So we go to the beach a lot, go out on the boat. Go for hikes and bike rides and stuff like that. So definitely just like a lot of time outside in nature, especially when you spend all week kind of like sitting
Yeah.
on calls. It's nice to get out into the world. And then otherwise, I really love to travel. So we do try to travel a lot, like with the kids and take them to new places, new experiences, that kind of thing. I'm one of those like weird people who like loves packing and loves planning travel. So that is a hobby for me in some
There's
ways.
your hobby. There you go. That can be your like semi-retirement career
Yeah.
too, just like helping people plan trips.
I know. I used to be like, I feel like a travel agent could like be fun, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a guy on our team here at ClearVoice. His name is Sam. He's our director of service delivery, and he is a master travel planner. Like when we do team trips, like he'll send me his itinerary for like the stuff he's gonna do outside of our like work time, and I'm like, how are you finding all these things? He's like, I just like to do it. I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I go to a place, I walk around. I'm like, "There's a cafe. Let's get a croissant." Like that's how it is for me. I have no plans. I'm like, I got to.
No, I'll be like, there are these 5 restaurants. We could do this. And my husband's like, I don't care, honey. And I'm like, no. But the experience would be different. He's like, I really don't care. You pick.
That's awesome. Well, that's a good fit then, right? Like at least you're not both like conflicting. But that's really cool, and I totally get the being outside. I will say, I also was a person with no hobbies, and then I discovered the hobby of pickleball. And
Ooh,
now I play because I was a very competitive athlete when I was younger, and it like re-unlocked something in me, and I was like, "This
nice.
is I can be competitive here." And I was like actually less competitive in the work environment because I was like getting it all out on the court.
Oh, that's a good
So
call.
it like
Yeah.
really helped my like my like
Your
growth
overall
and
intensity at
leadership.
work.
And I was like not I wasn't like so competitive about things. So anybody listening that like feels you're overly competitive at work, go find a very athletic
I
competitive
like
hobby. Ironman, pickleball, marathon running, something like that.
Yeah. No, I've done a little bit of pickleball. The first time I played pickleball actually was with I had just joined Typeform and we had an offsite in Boston and they're like, we're gonna go play pickleball. I was like, oh, I've never played. And everybody's like, oh, don't worry, I haven't either. All the Spanish people are like, oh, I've only played paddle. And then all the US people are like, well, I was like, a competitive tennis player growing up, but I've never played pickleball. And I was like, you guys this does not count. I played soccer growing up, not a
Yeah.
hand-eye sport. So
You're like, I got really good footwork, and that's it.
exactly. It was a lot of fun though, and I tried it, and I think I'd love to do more. I used to play soccer like in a women's league, but I just get too worried about getting hurt. So
Yeah, no, I get that. I
it's tricky.
100% get that. Well, we'll bring it back to marketing for a little bit longer. I'm curious. We talked about some trends in the thought leadership, but I'm curious. In the world of like everybody's still always talking about AI, and like some of the initiatives in AI are failing, right? And like some
Yeah.
companies, I think Typeform's AI integrations have been great. I've used them as well, like where I just kind
Nice.
of upload things and it builds the form for you. But I'm curious on the marketing side, like what are the trends that you think are here to stay? Not the fly by night, but like this is we're going to be using this in a variation of this in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the AI search stuff is very interesting and we're still figuring out, as I said in the past, like our Google search is like a big part of our current business. So as search has evolved, we've really had to think a lot about how do we show up in search moving forward? And that is kind of a big initiative we have for the end of this year and going into next year is kind of figuring that out because I think it will be disrupted. I don't think anything will die. The way people are like, this is gonna die, everything's gonna be dead. I don't think that is going to happen, but I think you
Sure.
will have to shift how you look at it. And I think the
Yeah.
trickiest part is going to be the in between where, you have these older channels that are very sophisticated in how you buy them and how you scale them. You have these newer things like AI, like even we see on the Google side, some of the new features they're coming out with are very black box. There's very little you can control. And so in a world where you're used to being able to really control and scale something, there's this messy middle where we're going to have to, I think everything will add more control over time, but I think there's a messy middle where you have to invest in these new channels, but they're so much harder to run and to scale compared to the older ones that it's a tricky point to figure out how much to invest in something that you have so little control over. So we're wrestling with that a little bit internally. And then I would also say, my team has been starting to experiment more with building apps internally that they can use to kind of automate
Sure.
routine parts of their day.
Absolutely.
And I think we're just scratching the surface, but I feel like that's what's going to be really interesting is starting to figure out what tools can I build in-house and maintain, right? The building isn't necessarily the hard part. It's the maintain part. I was talking to our VP of RevOps and he was like, yeah, you can build whatever you want, but I'm only maintaining so many things, right? So I think there's going to be this push me pull you of like, what opportunities are there to build like a really custom tool for your team in-house? How
Sure.
easy is it to do that? And I think that to me is the part where I think AI is really interesting of just making it easier to kind of do things in a very custom way for your team to remove a lot of repeat and repetitive work versus having to always try to like buy a solution that's got 10 different things stuffed in it. So I think that to me is going to be really interesting.
Yeah. I'm curious. So I had two questions that kind of stem off of that. One's kind of a philosophical question, so I'm going to ask that second. The first question is when you think about because one of the interesting thing about these new channels, right, that are cropping up with AI, even like trying to position your brand inside of the chat GPT and Claude response, like all of that bottom of funnel work that has to be done, right? Like just a lot of those projects that have to be taken on. I'm curious how you think about your budgeting across like the tried and true versus like the experimental.
Yeah.
And like, do you have sort of a rubric that you try to follow? Because like the experimental finance is going to be like, well, there's no ROI here. You're like, that's because we don't know what it's supposed to be yet, but we still need to try it, right? So how do you approach that as a growth leader?
It's been tricky so far. I would say I had a call earlier today about the fact that going into next year, we need to experiment more and we know that. And as a result, we kind of need more of a dedicated experiment budget than we have at the moment.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, at the moment, it's more of an all in paid budget that they find bits to move around. If they feel like there's something not working quite as well, they just try it somewhere else. And then a lot of the tried and true stuff is just kind of always on. But it hasn't been a specific, like I would love a world where like 30% of our budget was purely for experimentation. And I think if you really want to scale, like that's ideal. I find that's very hard to get to, especially in our kind of situation where things are like very transactional, like it just doesn't make sense for that much of your budget to be like so unknown. So I wouldn't expect us to get there, but I think we're going to get closer to assuming that, if we want to evolve quickly and we want to stay ahead of the trends, we have to just dedicate some portion of our time and our resources to just trying new stuff. And so at the moment it's a pretty small portion, but I'm hoping that it's going to get bigger going into next year.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting as marketers kind of grapple with this. We also sort of get a bucket of money, but I like work with our teams. Okay, like what are we going to experiment with? What do we market? Like what's for market research, right? And sort of making sure that we're honoring all of those buckets and not just like it's easy to go into paid, go.
Sure. I think we all like squirrel away bits here and there, as you go.
Like, well, the bigger philosophical question I had about like building AI, agents and sort of like the apps, internal apps and things like that for uses. So one of the things that we've talked about a little bit here, and I've talked about in other circles of marketers and leaders, is the sort of degradation of like being at the like source of the work, if you will. So like if you go to AI to build a plan, which is great, you have however many years of experience, I don't know, and I won't say. I have however many years of experience, also won't say, but we'll say at least a decade plus, right? So I know when I can like look at it, the output, and be like, this is bogus, this is fine, keep. But I think younger marketers are going to be I'm curious how you feel about, are younger marketers going to use these tools but not understand the like underlying frameworks that are feeding them? So you kind of have this sort of like loss of marketing knowledge in a weird way. I know it's kind of it's like an open-ended like philosophical thought, but I'm curious if you've even thought about that, and like if you have any like sort of protections that you would think to put in for younger marketers, or that younger marketers can think about for themselves as they use these tools to build, but don't, like we can do them so well because we have the reps of doing it like live, right?
Yeah. No, I think it's really tricky. And to be honest, I think you even see it now. Like I think I wrote some LinkedIn post of like, everybody used to think they knew marketing, and now with ChatGPT, they're pretty darn sure they do. Like you even see it now, right? People think that they know something because they have ChatGPT when they don't have the fundamental knowledge to understand this is right or wrong. And so I think you even see it, even honestly, I think I see it less in junior marketers than I do.
Like honestly, like not to dish on any like senior leaders outside of marketing, but it's like the CEO is like, well, the ChatGPT said
this. Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah. And so I think that's where we're almost running into it more than anything else. But yeah, to your point, I think it's an interesting question. I think where junior marketers will have a leg up is that they will start with AI. And I think that it's easier to start with something. Like I think about that a lot in my team. Like it's harder for me to look at my whole team and to be like, what things do I peel off for AI to do? Versus you're starting from nothing and you just start with it. That's a little bit easier for understanding what's possible and what's not. So I think in that way, junior marketers have a leg up. There's a lot of fundamental things around like messaging, what people call taste, all of this stuff that now like that is where you really learn how marketing works. And so I think it just means that more people have to learn a very core set of fundamentals, whereas before you could maybe just go up in a specific career path or like function and you would learn enough to know about, like you would get enough bits of it to know the function. And now I think it's more just like, because AI is making some of the function stuff less distinct, you kind of have to, everybody has to kind of know the same core stuff. So I think there's going to be pros and cons to that. Honestly, I think it's going to be hard for everybody to necessarily learn it, which might make it mean that less people get there, but I also mean that everybody probably will hopefully have a better foundation. So I think we can kind of take it both ways, honestly.
Yeah. I think brand is like, I think if a marketer understands brand, no matter what your function is, like I personally think you got to understand brand. Even if you understand data, but you don't understand brands, like you can't tie the story of the data. Yeah. That's kind of my, like, I'm always like, always learn brand, just like understand how brand works, messaging, like all those core values, all of that. Like, even if you're not like the most creative at making them, like, get to the core of why they matter. Yeah. That's how you protect a business. And like at some point, if you don't have enough money, like brand is how you build a moat, right?
Yeah. No, I think that's true. And I think it's that plus I still think I see, and I don't know, maybe this will get better, but I think people need to understand like the underlying revenue numbers of a business. I see plenty of marketers who don't understand those numbers, and it's when you have that disconnect that you kind of like lose credibility
Yeah.
internally. And so I think that that's a challenge I see sometimes too, of like people going too far one direction. If you're not connected to like the core of the business, like people don't believe what you're saying. And
Yeah, that's kind of what you were saying earlier about like I drove 10,000 MQLs and $0. I mean, you didn't say it that way, but
we're like,
like
we don't care, sales revenue's down.
amazing. You got some emails. Good job. Like, so, and by the way, like we produce content, like we're content forward motion, which is typically an MQL forward motion, but we also align to the SQL and the opportunity conversion because we saw it doesn't matter how many MQLs you have. Like you just need one conversation to turn it in our business, right? Because it's
Right.
B2B high contract value. You need one conversation to turn into a deal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, why do I care how many emails we got?
Right. It doesn't matter.
Like it just
Can
doesn't
you even
matter.
reach them in this day and age in their inbox?
Yeah, it's like it doesn't really matter, but the conversations are really, really
Yeah,
critical. And that's why partnership marketing, referral marketing is really big in those high contract value businesses because people buy from people they trust, right? You
100%.
have the same even in the sort of self-serve side.
Yeah,
Like when they're
totally.
looking at Outgrow, Typeform, Trench to a Google form, like
Yeah.
they're gonna ask people or go into a community and ask. And hopefully Typeform is the answer. It is.
I have to say we're lucky. Like it's part of the reason that I picked to come here because I felt like the brand was so strong and brand recognition was so strong. And when I look at the market right now, that's such a leg up. And if you don't have it, it's not to say you can't get there, but it makes everything easier if you have it to start with. And so that was a huge thing for me, even choosing to come here.
Yeah, absolutely. And shout out to your product team. It's very easy to buy as well. Like it's not
Yes.
confusing. Like the user experience going through it is like really. As somebody who's done many different types of quiz and form platforms,
Yeah.
like Typeform is definitely like. There's just no hurdles. There's like, I
Oh,
mean,
we'll have to sell
yeah,
that.
payment, but like that's a hurdle everywhere.
Yeah.
So,
You
but
do
for
have to pay us at the end of the day. Yeah.
yeah, no, of course. I mean, you're still providing SaaS, right? So it's like we still need to do the work, but awesome. So I think my last question for you is we kind of talked a little bit about like, what up and coming marketers can focus on. But I'm curious, just based on your experience and sort of your sort of journey, what are some final words of wisdom final mic drops you might give to them or any other marketers, even as your peers, as that we continue to do all of our work in the market?
I got you. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that I have advice to give
All right,
everybody.
give me the pearls. Yeah.
I think, for more junior marketers, I do believe that like getting your hands dirty is one of the best things you can do. So really being able to get in tools and like really understand how they work. I would say that's one of my biggest worries about AI is that it will take you further and further from some of that actual tooling, which
Sure.
I personally am more of a kinetic learner. And I know that I learn better when I'm hands on keyboard and I'm seeing all the pieces and not just when somebody gives me an output summary of what happened. And so I would say find places where you can really get into the work. I would also say I think being data driven gets a good rap and a bad rap. I think at the end of the day, to me it's about understanding fundamentally how the data works at your business. And I
Sure.
think that a lot of
Yeah.
people skip that. You get reports, but you don't understand how they came to be. You don't understand some of the caveats in the data. So I would say get really close to your RevOps and your data people. It's they're nice folks, I promise. But the more you can understand about that underlying data model, the more you understand what's happening and why it might be happening. And you're not just constantly at the mercy of a reporting dashboard that somebody else gave you. So I see that a lot where people will just be like, well, this number is down, but they don't understand the way that that number was constructed in the first
Sure.
place. And as
Yeah.
a result, all the things it might mean. So I found the most success in my career when I really have understood how everything is set up from like a structural sense. And it's not as fun. It's not really about marketing, but I think knowing it is kind of what kind of gives you the leg up to understand what's really happening in the business. And then yeah, finally, I think brand is a tricky one. Like we all know we need more of it, but it's figuring out how it fits into your business. So I think it's different for every stage you're at, how you do it, and realizing that there are lots of different investment levels that you can push it for. And there are lots of different ways to go about it. We all see the big, beautiful brand campaigns. Those are awesome. Not everybody can do that. And there are ways to increase your brand awareness without doing that. Like you can run cheap paid social campaigns that'll give you a significant lift without anything close to that production value. So I think it's just realizing that at the end of the day, the goal is for people to be talking about you and to feel like they see your name a lot of places. And there are a lot of different paths to get there through customers, through paid spend, through, all kinds of things. And so it's just figuring out what path is best for your business and what you think you can actually activate on your end.
Awesome. I love that. I love all of those, especially the data one, because the RevOps guy here at ClearVoice, his name is Donnie. He's like, we've become very good friends because of doing that work together. And
Yeah.
I was like, teach me how it works. And I get really excited when I can like talk the talk of a RevOps person. He's like, I'm so proud. I'm like,
They're so proud. You've grown up. Yeah, yeah. I feel like some of my best relationships are with data and RevOps of just like when you understand how everything works, you can be like, hey, this number is down. Did this pipeline break? Did this workflow do this? Is this shifted? And if you don't have that context, it's harder to have conversations across the org and it's harder to know what's happening.
Well, I think from a personal brand standpoint internally too, you think about building know, like, and trust. Like you have to do that with your peers, with your team, and with people you're managing up to, and knowing your data and how it impacts the different aspects of what you do is probably, I would say, the number one way to
Yeah,
build trust, like
100%.
with anybody in the organization. So,
Always
um,
know your numbers. Yeah.
yeah, always, always. All right. Well, thank you so much, Meg, for joining me today on the ClearVoice mic. I really appreciate all of the knowledge and just our great conversation. So we'll probably invite you back on again
Oh my
in the
God.
future, just to continue to talk about campaigns and things like that. But again, thank you so much. Any final little words of wisdom, or are we good?
I don't think I have any more. I really appreciated the chat though. I feel like we had a great number of things to talk through and it was a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Awesome. The mic has been dropped, and we'll see you again soon.